Hello, and welcome to another edition of MLB Pro Happy Hour. I am your anonymous GM. We are approaching noon Eastern Time here on what is trade deadline day. It's a big day for MLB Pro, and it's been a busy 24 hours, 36 hours, and it's only going to continue to be a busy next, 7.5 hours, I guess. So trades have been coming. Trades will continue to come. And it's the perfect time to discuss trades. As always, I'm joined by Brenton. And what's on your mind? We've got trades to discuss. Which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, I figured we'd go in chronological order, and just run through these as many as we can get to. And by my counts, chronological order starting yesterday. Well, shit, I guess this is pre-sim. Forget about it. We're still going to talk about it. I think Jonathan Garcia to New York just makes too much sense to talk about.
Jonathan Garcia, a big power bat acquired from Kansas City with 100% retention. It cost the Yankees AAA pitcher. He was actually on the big league roster. It looks like Luis Martinez and infielder Luis Mafra from A-plus Tampa Bay. The Yankees confirm they were looking for a big-time bat against left-handed pitching. Garcia potentially could do that. A good clubhouse guy, can play multiple positions in the outfield. What was your take on it?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Yankees give up a couple decent pieces, nothing great. I mean, Garcia is a rental, pure and simple. They have no money to re-sign him at anything he'll be close to asking for next year. He's a rental. But I think he fills a hole. Like Yoshi Tsutsugo can't hit in left field the way that Rhett wants his left fielder to hit, and he can't field for shit. So Jonathan Garcia can play both corner positions, will hit the ball very well in New York, you'd assume. And while I like Martinez and Ulysses has a cool name and is a kind of a flyer, New York's in, right? This is a pure, simple, 100% I'm all in right now move, and I kind of dig it from both sides. I give him a B+ rating on both sides of the trade here.
I tend to agree. We've seen these type of players go to New York, low, average, high power guys, and they get to New York and the power only goes up and the average seems to increase slightly. And in a lineup that there's going to be plenty of protection, Garcia is going to go from having to hit maybe in the middle of the order in Kansas City to hitting 8th or 9th in New York. It's the perfect bat for Rhett. Of all the trades that have been happening in New York, there have been some that I think have had some of us scratching our head. I do not think this was one of those trades. I like it for both sides.
Agreed.
Next, how about we stay in New York and we talk about the Yankees and Tampa Bay Rays trade of Yoenis Cespedes, 100% retention, Paul Goldschmidt, 100% retention going from Tampa to New York. New York sending back relief pitcher Avalisa Trishwant and outfielder Ian, I have no idea how to say that last name, Biavis. Yeah. What do we think on that one?
This one confused me more, and this is kind of where I started to get lost with what New York's going to do. How short is has New York's leash been for Joe Mauer, right? Like they just brought him in to play first base, and
they also I'm sorry, just extended him as well.
Yeah, so I mean, like, where does Paul Goldschmidt play? Arnaud Arai is a monster, so you're not taking him out of the DH spot. Mauer can't play anywhere else. Gary Sanchez is playing catcher, but Mauer's knees are done. Where does Goldschmidt fit into this thing? I can't quite figure that out. I guess we could stay there first. Do you have any idea where Goldschmidt's going to hit in this lineup?
Looking to see if he has any other position potential, and it looks like the answer to that is no. No, because even if you play Arai at third, what do you do with the recently acquired Miguel Sano? And Sano and Goldschmidt are the same. I mean, I have no idea where they fit all these pieces in.
No, and then that leads you to believe, okay, well, did they just take him to get Yoenis Cespedes? But why? What is Yoenis Cespedes going to bring to the table? He's got Michael Sharp in center field right now, which is interesting. I love Sharp's versatility there. But Cespedes isn't better than the recently mentioned Jonathan Garcia. He's probably not going to displace Michael Sharp. Esteban Hernandez hasn't exactly lit the world on fire, but like Cespedes isn't going to replace any of these dudes. So he's your floater, I guess. I don't know.
I don't get it. And unlike the last trade where it was a rental, so the Yankees didn't have to give up very much, while this looks like a rental as well, and while he's far away and not perfect, Avalisa Trishwant has terrific stuff. Hitting 98 on the gun. He's only 21 years old. He's a pitcher down the line who could could be a big league reliever. And as you pointed out, I don't know where these guys fit in. I did not love this trade for New York.
No, I gave them a C to C minus rating on it just because, I guess it's always good to have more power bats, but they're not in the National League, so you're not going to pinch hit. I don't know who you pull to pinch hit for a guy like Goldschmidt. Bovis isn't much, but I really like the potential of Triswan as a stopper or setup guy down the line. He has some control issues, but the dude can hurl the ball. So for Tampa Bay to get something like that for essentially nothing, I think that they clearly won this deal.
So the Yankees were not the only team to make 2 trades recently. We had the Colorado Rockies making a pair. The first one with the Washington Nationals. Judd Graham, a player who I think began in Colorado, was traded to Washington and now going back to Colorado, was traded for 4 players. AAA pitcher Teobaldo Tavaco, AAA outfielder Roy McKenzie, A-plus minor league starting pitcher Drake Fellows, and a rookie league outfielder Stephen O'Toole. Thoughts on this one?
The interesting piece about Washington is that they have pitching depth better than a lot of teams in any of the leagues, even the National League, which is pitching heavy. So losing a guy like Judd Graham isn't the worst thing, but you got to figure they could have gotten more in return, right? We keep saying this over and over again. How the hell does Colorado keep acquiring players? Where are they pulling these prospects from? Drake Fellows is interesting. Warren McKenzie is interesting, but Judd Graham is the centerpiece and far and away the best player in this trade. I think if the Nationals put him on the block, they could have gotten something better. We know Oakland's looking for an arm. We know Baltimore is looking for a top-of-the-rotation arm. We know a couple other teams out there with heavy prospect availability are looking for arms like Judd Graham. I don't see why you deal him to Colorado for a handful of not even quad-A players, AAA at best players, it seems.
It's an interesting team. As you pointed out, there's a ton of pitching depth. Most of it happens to be on the injured list right now between Mark Davies, Nick Pickett, and Cole Swanson. Yeah. You still have Ed Reese. Scott Travail has pitched pretty well this year. But after that, they've just been decimated. So you had a guy in Judd Graham. What was his contract like? Signed for a couple years?
I'll pull him up now. I don't remember.
I believe he's under team control for a couple years. And why I think that's really interesting is when you're looking at Washington, they're going to have not a decision because I think it's going to happen next year. But Mark Davies has an opt-out after 2021 with only 1 year behind that guaranteed. Mark Davies is going to opt out of that. So he's going to require a big-time contract. Do the Nationals pan that out? Or are they potentially going to lose Mark Davies? Someone like Judd Graham, as you pointed out, there would have been interest. And what did the Washington get back? They got a lot of fringe prospects, players that, frankly, I don't believe are prospects. The only one that I think is Drake Fellows. And I think Drake Fellows does have potential to be a quality prospect. I just don't know if Drake Fellows is the guy you want to headline a package of a player that wasn't put on the trade block.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think this is something that he could have gotten this deal done later today. Eddie's not a unpersistent dude. If he wants something, he will let you know about it. This would have been here right now still. I think he could have taken the night and the morning to put a guy like Judd Graham on the block and fielded a couple offers. Maybe he didn't want to do it. It's not exactly the most enjoyable process sometimes throwing somebody on the block, but whatever. I guess
we're gonna get to a trade later that I think I have an answer that I believe would have been a better player alone. We'll get to it in a little bit. Moving on to the Rockies' second trade, it was an interesting one. A trade deadline deal of their scouting director Bill Schmidt to Minnesota for Andres Jimenez, a Double-A shortstop. Thoughts on this one?
I have thoughts on this. I don't want to expose him just because I don't want to blow up Eddie's spot with what I think he's trying to do. He has not told me what he's trying to do. I have a thought. I have watched what Eddie has done from a minor league acquisition process over the last 3 or 4 months. And I think I know the direction he is taking this system. And it's different than what he'd been running before, right? He's going in a different direction. So he was trying to deal this scouting director. He'd been offering coaches and the scouting director up consistently in trade talks for the last 2 or 3 months. I think he finally decided, whatever, it's not going to work as a toss-in. I'm just going to send him out and get something back. And I like Jimenez. He's an interesting piece. He's a defensive guy, right? Good character. I think he got something that he'd like to throw in the bullpen to help out his young arms in the field. And then he's going to go sign the scouting director who he wants. And I told you it was off air. Don't tell anybody about it, but you know who I picked. It's like mailed to myself now.
Let's put it this way. My only issue with this trade, it does not come from the Colorado side. If they wanted to move a scouting director, by all means, move your scouting director. But if you're Minnesota, if you're Rocky, yeah, why are you giving up anything of value for personnel?
I have no idea. He's tilting hard right now. I wonder if he is panicking, thinking that his scout is a big reason for some of the players he's brought in struggles. He brought in players that should be great, right, and never worked out. Maybe that's the thought, and he just saw the one he wanted and took it. But there's guys out there available. I would have taken over the dude he picked up from a trade. I'm with you. I don't understand it at all.
I mean, just quickly running through this list: Denorfia, Darren Johnson, Dan Kravitz, Jerry DePoto, Theo Epstein, RJ Harrison. There are plenty of quality scouts out there to not have to give up a prospect. That's the aspect of me that I don't get. Even if Bill Schmidt is the perfect scout, which I don't know if he is or not, but I don't know. I didn't love this move from Minnesota's point of view.
No, I'm with you. It was confusing, but I don't know. He just has to be he's trying to hit the reset button. That's all I can think is that he's just trying to get a fresh eye and whatever. I got no explanation.
Another team. We've got two teams making two trades everywhere. The first of two for the Dodgers. They brought in, or rather, they traded away Boomer Potts to Arizona and brought back Connor Sadzik and rookie league second baseman Mike Flynn. Is Boomer Potts the type of player that can continue to fit in the Arizona bullpen and keep Arizona ahead of Colorado?
Yeah, I think they brought in a bunch of good pieces, right? I think that they have done a great job overhauling the bullpen and setting themselves up for a playoff run that they didn't anticipate at the start of this year. They've done a great job of showing you what you can do when your rebuild accelerates a year, right? I think that they probably thought 2021 was their year. 2020 is turning into it, and he is doing a good job of not selling off anything that's close to the majors now. He's not going to be in trouble, but shoring up his biggest weakness, which is the bullpen. So Boomer Potts isn't going to light the world on fire, but I like him a lot for this bullpen right now.
He's having a very good year. Connor Sadzik, while still decent, has struggled relative to past years. But I think this was a trade that helps both sides. Potts wasn't needed in LA anymore, and they bring back a younger bullpen arm that has a track record of success at the big league level, and maybe he finds that again. And as the Dodgers have kind of said elsewhere, they're looking towards next year, and I think this is a trade that helps them do that.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I think it was a win-win on both sides.
I don't have the other Dodger trade in front of me. Do you have that one?
Josh Tomlin. The length of it is they traded an old-ass pitcher to the Indians.
Here it is. Yeah, to Cleveland for Dave Hughes and Garrett Stallings. Can Josh Tomlin be the answer for the Indians?
No. Look, I love Aiden, and we kind of torched him a little bit. Last time we were on together about not picking up that import, but Josh Tomlin's not the answer here. This guy, he's been out of the American League for a couple of years. He's nothing, right? He's nothing. Like, you're not going to replace Rod Swift at all. You're not going to do it. But this sure as hell ain't the way to go, right? I think the Angels showed you the more appropriate way to handle this. Unsurprisingly, they did it right when picking up a couple of different dudes. And I know that Houston has been dangling Melvin Garner. That would have been a better option. So I don't know why you go get Josh Tomlin, other than the fact that he probably retires after the year and you don't have another arm in your system. I don't know. I don't get this one at all.
So I'm a little different, I think. I think if there's any expectation or believing in 2017 Josh Tomlin's success in Cleveland, I'm not ready to say that's coming back. But Josh Tomlin has continued to pitch well. He's got terrific control. He walks nobody. 9 walks in 114 innings this year. He keeps the ball in play for the most part, less than 1 home run per 9 innings. He's better than Todd Howard. And I think we've been telling him, Aiden, that the back of the rotation need to be fixed. Yes, this is not going to solve Rod Swift's injury. I don't think this move puts Cleveland over the top and advancing very far in the American League playoffs. But I do think Josh Tomlin is the type of guy that can help them get consistent innings, hand the ball over to typically a good bullpen, and keep them ahead in the American League Central. I do think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, he's not you have to expect worse results, right? He's pitched with a 3.63 ERA, but that isn't the National League, right? So you have to figure that number goes up when he jumps to the American. But I guess my point is, for a fan base in Cleveland that are looking to make the playoffs for the second year in their existence, I guess I hadn't realized that. I did more to sustain success. To be in the position they're in and to have management go bring in a 35-year-old back end of the rotation reliever as their big piece of the deadline, is that what makes you excited for their future here when you have Chicago doing what they're doing and some of these other teams making the moves they're making?
No, it probably doesn't.
Yeah.
Next up in our line, we head back to the Dodgers. The Dodgers, actually, I guess we had 3 trades. A trade with the Chicago Cubs. Jabs made an appearance in the trade window. Welcome back, Chicago. And the Cubs sent Casey Mulligan and outfielder Juan Costello to LA in return for Julio Urias. I have this one as a win-win. I've been told from other sources they believe this is a win-win. What say you?
I say the opposite. I don't think it's a huge loss, but I think the Dodgers are coming up short here, right? I guess it kind of depends on your view of the Dodgers, though. I don't see them as ready to compete next year still. So for me, acquiring the arm that they did, Casey Mulligan, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Especially for a guy like Julio Urias, who I think could have stepped into that bullpen as soon as the end of this year. He probably given a September call-up and been fine. So I don't understand it, right? The other guy, the outfielder they got, I mean, he's nothing terrible, but again, he's not going to come up and take a spot in the Dodgers lineup anytime over the next couple of years without significant development. I don't know why you deal a guy like Julio Urias, who I know has been sought after by multiple teams, and send him off. I think you could have plugged him in and gotten Mulligan for cheaper, probably.
The one question mark I think that comes up with this, and it does go into the belief of the Dodgers, can they win next year, is there's now been a lot of talk seemingly about John Lester being on the trade block. Will he waive a no-trade clause? If you move John Lester, you free up a lot of money, assuming you're not retaining much in a trade. But doesn't that then impact their ability to win next year? So if you bring in Mulligan with the goal of winning next year, does that tie them to John Lester?
I mean, I think he still tries to move him just based on the fact that that's his only window, right? And you've got Lucio Cruzado coming back, Clarence Walker coming back off the DL next year. So, and Tomlin's gone. So then you have Cruzado, Walker, Cozart, Markel, and White. As they did pick up Steve White, I kind of forgot. That's a Steve White.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So yeah, they've been making other moves. You're right.
Yeah, so they've got a rotation. I think they still move Lester, but the point remains, I don't think this team as constructed can compete. Zach Cox is an interesting addition this year, right? Soto's obviously been down. So maybe they think between Garcia, Soto, Profar, Cox that they can still turn this thing around, but they need a center fielder. Jeffrey Moore hasn't worked out. I don't know. I have to believe that this is not the last we hear of them either before the deadline or where the offseason goes, because you've got Jeremy Donald coming up next year. Stiani's close. They're on the verge of having some young stars come up to join this lineup. I'd hate to see it be that they bring in a 35-year-old reliever and that's it. So I don't know. I have to believe they're going to do other things.
So the next trade I think is the one that I look back at the Judd Graham trade and think, if this trade happened, there was more to what could have brought into Judd Graham, and that is Zach Greinke going from San Francisco to Oakland for Francisco Gonzalez. Zach Greinke's salary for this season was retained, but Zach Greinke is 36 years old, 280. He's more than 36 and a half years old. The A's are now going to owe him $20 million next year when he's 37. And $13.5 million when he's 38. Let me remind you that the Oakland A's currently sit in last place in the American League West at 46-63, 8.5 games behind the Astros, 14 games behind the Rangers. So we haven't even talked about the Angels and Mariners yet. Zach Greinke's not going to get them to the top of the division.
No.
He's paying them a lot. And Francisco Gonzalez is a solid prospect.
I liked him. I really do. It kind of didn't make a hell of a lot of sense since we know that Sparks has been discussed as well. And I kind of figure if you're going to deal Sparks, it's because you see Gonzalez coming up and taking that spot over. It sounds like they're going to think about moving Jose Rosario there if Sparks ends up moving. But I agree with you. This feels like a move he would have made after the acquisition of the top flight arm, and he was looking forward to be like the finishing piece, right? Zach Greinke is still a great arm. He's still pitching well, but he's the last piece you add when you're sure you can compete. They still can't, right? And so he still has to now go out and add other pieces with a $20 million thing on his books, knowing that he doesn't want to move Greg Fastini and some of these other pieces in his minor league system. I don't know where Scott goes from there. We've seen him pull magic out of his hat in Cincinnati before, so it's tough to doubt him. You know, if there's no injuries, the Reds are probably – they've been to the playoffs a couple of years in a row, but he's been derailed. I don't get it. I really didn't see that one coming. Good on Ryan Buchholz out in San Francisco for getting a really, really good piece in return for an old pitcher that should have gone to a competitor or to a contender. But you have to believe Scott has another move up. That's the only reason this makes sense is he thinks he's close to another deal.
Especially, I mean, as you pointed out, Taylor Sparks is on the block. Walker Buehler's name seems to be everywhere. They got to sign Lucas Giolito next season. Mm-hmm. And they just tied up a bunch of unnecessary money. I mean, I like the idea behind it of Giolito, Buehler, Greinke, Shelby Miller, Tracy Mast. There's a good rotation. The problem is this strategy didn't work for Jason. Jason, year after year, was bringing in pitchers, wanting to pitch in the American League West, and it just didn't work. Why is this all of a sudden going to work for the 36? Again, Zach Greinke's having a really good year. He's still a good pitcher.
Yeah.
But at $20 million on a team that's in dead last, I just can't put my head around this one, especially, as you pointed out, if big league players are being shipped out. It just does not make sense.
No. Either he's got another idea or this is something that came together late in the night and he was like, yeah, what the hell, I'll do it. And he never thought – he didn't think through the consequences, which is also possible. That's a wild point. I've never understood why – the person in Oakland has not looked at the fact that their rotation's fine. They need to add a bat. And nobody that's had that team for the last 5 years has thought, yeah, if I had a power bat, I'm good here. So I don't know.
They also have a terrible defense. I mean, you can't go all in on pitching and then put a terrible defense in front of them. I mean, it's no different than Jordan Lyles in Detroit.
Yep.
Yeah, he had a terrible year. There's no denying that. But part of the reason he had a terrible year was that defense was historically bad.
Yeah, they're playing 14 second basemen all over the place.
We have another team with two trades. The Angels last night snuck in a pair. The first came with the Miami Marlins. The Angels sent Travis Swaggerty, pitcher Alex Calipari, catcher Juan Aviles, and relief pitcher Ramiro Guerra to the Marlins for John Lamb and international prospect Ramiro Magana. What's your take on this one?
Actually, I do like this from both sides. I know we all hate to see the Angels get better, but, I mean, Lamb's a great pitcher for what they need, and they have a history of turning above-average pitchers into something spectacular and average ones into good ones. So I like him spending over there. He's also not super expensive, right? So it's not like it kills them. Not that matters for the Angels. But for the Marlins, he adds a bat that I love Travis Swaggerty. I think he's great. Beyond the fact that he's got one of the best names in baseball, I think he's a very versatile outfielder that if you can toss him out there with Acuna and I forget the other fellow they have that plays outfield that I love, that other outfielder that got he's in the majors now. But, you know, like Ryan is slowly building this very, very exciting young team from nothing. And he's still down on his team. He's still – Henry Powell was the guy's name I was thinking of. Oh, by the way, they also have Jose Gonzalez. So, like, they've got a ton of outfield talent down here. But now he upgrades his defense. He brings in a guy like Swaggerty. Wander Franco is ready next year. Acuna comes back up. Like, I think this is the perfect acquisition for the Marlins. And now if they can flip some of these other pieces and grab one or two more, I think they're the first team to catch the Mets, unfortunately. It's not going to be my Braves.
They also have a deep rotation. Brett Marshall's been good. I mean, he's 30 years old, but he's good. I guess he's been in the bullpen, it looks like. But Pat Swain, Alex White, they got Lance McCullers off the injured list here soon. They have some AAA arms, highly regarded prospects from within the system: Dane Greer, Griffin Canning, Hunter Barco, Hayden Pierce, all guys that need opportunity. Mm-hmm. John Lamb, I believe, is a free agent after next season. So where the Marlins going to extend?
I think so. He might stick around. I don't know.
Yeah, but the Marlins weren't going to extend him long term at that north side of 30 years old. So I think they had to trade him. And when you look at the Angels, a team that we've been talking about here ever since Ryan Copeland got hurt, they needed a pitcher.
Yep.
Between Alex White, who Matt sees is producing, and the numbers say he is, but you look at him and you're like, you scratch your head wondering how it's happening. Rosenthal's been awful, and rumors are Brady Singer's being demoted. So you throw in Lamb as an innings eater, and I think that maybe fixes some of their problems in their rotation. And then of course an outfield of Mazzara, Trout aren't going anywhere soon. So Swaggerty was blocked. I think it's a trade that works for both teams.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked that one. I think that was my favorite of the two. Steven Matz is good. I think that's a good acquisition too, but I really liked this trade for both sides more than I liked the other one.
So the other one being the Angels trading first base prospect Spencer Brash and relief pitch minor leaguer Jorge Martinez to the Rays for Steven Matz and Anthony Edwards. Kind of same thing as you said. The Angels bring in another guy who eats innings. He's far from spectacular. But they gave up no one who is close to the majors. So it's one of those trades that I think it's kind of hard to view at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, Matz could easily get left off the postseason roster, honestly, but he could also come in and do exactly what you expect him to do, which is eat innings and keep the Angels opponents under 4 runs, which is plenty for them to beat anybody. So I think Matt did what we all expected him to do, which was go out and get talented older guys at the end of the contract that weren't on a lot of radars. He gave up Swaggerty, which is tough, but he managed to keep his real prospects, in-house. So he didn't give up his future, which he still needs. Like Brian Hennessy's still there, Adam Smith is still there, right? So I think it, as much as I hate to say it, was a great move for the Angels and puts them back on track to get that wild card spot, which I think they may have felt slipping away a little bit.
And all this brings us to today, in our first trade on trade deadline Friday, a trade that I don't think many people saw coming a couple days ago. That being the Chicago White Sox sending Craig Kimbrell packing. And not only did they send him packing, but they sent him packing to an American League contender, which has me scratching my head a little bit. But they traded him to Toronto in exchange for Lance Hartgraves and Raul Leon. Let me hear your take, because I have a take after that. Let's start with you, though.
This is confusing, but I mean, so is Craig Kimbrell's performance this year has been confusing. His BABIP is lower than it's ever been. What is it, 143 right now? But his ERA skyrockets from 0.87 last year or at the start of the year in Cincinnati to 5.4 in Chicago over 18 innings. Incredibly small sample size. I would have loved to have seen them maybe pull him back a little bit, right? The White Sox should make the playoffs. Pull him back, take him out of high leverage situations, just let him get some innings under his belt, and then get him back out there, because he's a guy that you want on your roster come playoff time. But God, was he bad in 18 innings in Chicago. So this feels like a situation that you want to talk about, like the overreaction in New York to Joe Mauer's slow start. This is an overreaction from Jonathan Hodges, I think, in the American League. And I think Mitch pulls the trigger on bringing in a guy that, to his point, he doesn't know where he's going to put him. But if you can let Kimbrell throw a couple of unimportant, low-intensity innings early on, and he figures his shit out and becomes a real valuable piece in that bullpen in Toronto, they've now got enough pieces they can shut down a game from inning 6 on that he kind of needs with his rotation.
So first issue I have, small sample size, 20 innings pitched in Chicago, 11 earned runs in Chicago. 7 of those have come in 3 outings in which he's lasted less than 2 innings. So in those other 18 innings, he's basically been Craig Kimbrell. We're looking at 3 bad innings. They all happen to be against the Detroit Tigers. Go figure that one out. But I don't love moving Craig Kimbrell, and I really don't love moving Craig Kimbrell for what they got back. And I say that because I have on semi-good authority that Lance Hartgraves was a player that was basically in every trade discussion Mitch was having.
Yeah.
Mitch views Lance Hartgraves, and credit to Mitch, as persuading other people that Lance Hartgraves has value. And in order to do that, Mitch highlights that he's a catcher and that he's a former top 100 prospect. But let's take a look at things. Lance Hartgraves really is not a catcher anymore. He's a first baseman. He's a below-average catcher, if that, defensively. He's now past 25 years old. He's no longer a minor leaguer. He's on a big league contract. He really hasn't produced. I mean, he's produced in 17 at-bats with the Blue Jays, but In 2019 at AAA, he hit under 200. He's hitting 250 this year. There's not extreme power by any stretch. He's a poor work ethic player. Personally, Lance Hartgraves has zero value.
Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted him. Like I said, this feels like I know that the White Sox were in a couple other trades, the Kyle Cody thing specifically, right? He had a deal almost in place. Now, again, I don't know why he wanted to deal Kyle Cody, but again, he had that deal in place. It fell apart, and this kind of came out of nowhere right after that. So it feels like a snap reaction that, well, shit, I can't do anything. I feel trapped. I've got nothing going on. Craig Kimbrell sucks. I'm angry. Let me get him out of the team. Maybe this will help. And I think it's the wrong move. I hate to see it. I'd love to see Hodges make the playoffs, but I think it's the wrong move.
The other side of it, you hit on it. Mitch described it in the post. It will be interesting to see the chemistry of this one. Here's another team, much like Colorado. They're acquiring closer after closer after closer. Mm-hmm. You can only have one closer. Walden wants to be a closer. Tejada wants to be a closer. Chapman actually wants to be in the starting rotation. So Aroldis, even though looks like he's never started a game in MLB Pro, so someone needs to tell him he's not a starter anymore. Kimbrell wants to be a closer. So who ends up closing? I think it's going to be Walden. Still, although he has an ERA north of 5, so I don't know who closes in Toronto, but there's going to be some team chemistry issues potentially there.
I mean, everyone's favorite MLB Pro legend, Justin Jabs, has long beat the drum that the closer is a dumb position and you don't want it. So maybe you see something going on here in Toronto where you just throw all of those guys into high leverage stopper positions and let them play the matchups appropriately. I think that would be an interesting look at this. Maybe it's nobody's happy, everyone's happy kind of thing, but I agree with you. Now you got 2 or 3 closers who have struggled to do their job. Maybe you take Jab's advice and say, fuck the closer, let's put them all in high leverage stopper positions and see how it rolls. That might be the move. Like he said, he doesn't like his rotation and he's had trouble getting them deep into games. If you can throw, what is that? Who'd you say it was? Walden, Kimbrell,
Tejada from the Padres in the past.
Bongers and Chapman. If you're 6, 7, 8, 9 is, Chapman, Bongers, Walden, and Kimbrell. I mean, you're not going to give up a ton of runs in those innings if they have to pitch 1 inning each. And that's all they got. And you can throw Venters in against lefties when you need to, Flores against lefties, Tejada in there. Like, this is a good bullpen if it's handled appropriately. The
only flip side to that, and then again, I love Justin Jabs. There are plenty of strategies that work out there, but there are a couple situations I want to run by you here. The Braves were best when they had Dennis Moore closing in the 9th inning, right?
Yep.
The Angels historically have kept Paul Erickson in the 9th inning role, despite the fact that he could be a starter. Before Erickson, there was Walden. They had Heath Bell. The Angels have valued a closer. It's worked for the Angels, right? Yeah. You look in New York, Kyle Raddatz. He was absolutely amazing. He was locking games down for them. 9th innings weren't a concern. The flip side, a team that really has not valued the closer in numerous years, and while it's working for them, there's always the 9th inning worries, the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
The no closer situation is an interesting one. I think you stick with the closer. I think they just need to figure out which one it is. I think you pointed out, if they continue to win games, the players aren't going to care if they're pitching in the 8th inning or the 7th inning. I think it's going to work out, especially in the short term. Maybe long term, this offseason, someone's got to go. But short term, I think it works out.
It's Mitch. Of course someone's going to go in the offseason. We'll be lucky to see if Johnny did fucking, what's his name, pitch 1 inning. But he's probably going to move him today. He's probably been offered to 4 teams already.
I would not be surprised. We got about 5 minutes, it looks like, before this recording goes out. What else is on our mind today? Who gets moved? Which team is most active? We had a rumor this morning of Juan Hidalgo, second baseman for the Phillies, potentially being on the move. We've heard from Miami, Brandon Klein, although he hasn't been moved yet, and there was some expectations that Ryan was going to be busy today, so maybe that doesn't happen. What are you looking for today?
I hope that Matt Wells and the Astros can make some moves today. I know that he is busy outside of the trade deadline doing some of the things, but I would love to see him make a move with some of the guys he put on the dock because there's some talented players there. I would not be surprised if the Cardinals go make a move, and then the Baltimore Orioles have to make 2 or 3 moves. I know for a fact they're involved in 2 or 3 conversations. They have to pull at least one more trigger for that team to be relevant next year.
1,000%. Marcus Stroman needs to be moved. And if Anthony Rizzo is not traded today, I'm going to personally hunt down Drew Hastings and ask him what he's doing, because Anthony Rizzo has to be traded today.
Hey, he lives half a mile from me. I'll drive down there and slap him upside the head for you. He does.
Please.
I don't know why Nick Senzel has to be called up. I've been killing him over this all year. Why would you not deal Rizzo and call up Senzel? There
are about 5 guys that need to be called up, and they need to be called. Again, we worry, I think, a lot as GMs about the starting a player's clock, and rightfully so. Don't get me wrong. But at some point when you approach 23, 24, 2 things come into play. Rule 5 eligibility, guys that are going to need to be put on the 40-man roster in December. So if you put them on the roster in August, really doesn't change a whole lot. And if you put them on the roster earlier, at least the 40-man, you start their clock earlier. Yes, you pay them sooner. They reach arbitration sooner, but they also reach the point where you can offer them long-term extensions sooner. And instead of having to make decisions about locking guys out, locking up long-term at 29 and 30, you can do so at 26, 27, 28. And maybe it makes offering big-time extensions easier. So I'm with you. Baltimore needs to be active. Seattle going to do anything today?
No, I think he decided to hold his pieces, which is probably the right move for him. Like, the guys he's dangling aren't going to get less valuable at the end of the season. They're just not. They're young enough that they'll still be just as valuable. I think it gives him security and lets him focus on what's important. If I look around, like, Eddie's always talking, right? I think there's a bunch of teams that are set, and they're going to start throwing darts at the big move, right? I think I've had 3 teams come to me for Colby Allard over the last couple of days. He's not moving. Don't take that the wrong way. It's not happening. But people are trying to throw their big shot out there and see if they can make a big splash at the end of the deadline. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys go out there and take shots at Walker Buehler and some of the top end starters and some of these shitty teams. See what they can get done.
So I got four things for you, I guess. Do the Mets do anything? Do they do something to replace Kyle Radat so it looks like it is done?
Yes. Bruce has been in the chat more frequently over the last 2 days than he has been all year. Bruce does something small. It's not going to be anybody massive, but he'll do something small.
There are bullpen arms available. I agree there. Then the big names that we've heard, one in Chicago, Kyle Cody. You see a White Sox in 24 hours?
Yes.
Oakland, 2 names there. Walker Buehler, Taylor Sparks. 1, 2, 0. Who gets traded?
Taylor Sparks is moved. Walker Buehler is not.
And I think that's our morning look at the trade deadline. Are you going to be around later?
Yep. I have one more meeting throughout the day, but I told my wife it's trade deadline day, so I'm going to be available all day.
Perfect. Then we'll be back later today with even more trade news and breakdowns, and we'll be back then.